Hello, and thanks for joining me on Top the Walk. I'm Sarah Wong. This week, the National People's Congress Standing Committee redrew Hong Kong's electoral framework by amending annexes of the Basic Law. Chief Executive Carrie Lam joins us today for a discussion. Madam Chief Executive, thank you very much for meeting with us today. So after Beijing approved the amendments to Annexes 1 and 2 of the Basic Law, critics said it's a huge setback for Hong Kong's pursuit for democracy since the handover. You have steadfastly said otherwise, stressing that universal suffrage is still on the table. But first of all, how do you define democracy?
That's a very good question. I have said on several occasions that there is no one size that fits all as far as democracy is concerned. Any political system will have to take into account several very important factors. One is, the primary one is the constitutional context. Whether this place is an independent state, whether it is a federal state, whether it is an administration, a district administration within a country. The second factor is, of course, the history. We have to take a historical perspective because every system is evolving, is not transplanted from one place to another. If you look at the Western democracies, it has taken them over a century to come to the present state. And finally is the actual situation, okay? So from those three perspectives, I would strongly refute any description of the current package to improve Hong Kong's electoral system as a retrogression. It's very much bringing Hong Kong's political structure through the electoral system onto the right track. And the right track has to fulfill one country, two systems. The right track has to ensure Hong Kong's stability and prosperity. And the right track has to safeguard Hong Kong people's safety.
You mentioned some people call it the retrogression of democracy. And when we pulled up Annexes 1 and 2 of the Basic Law, we found that the initial 800-member election committee before the 2010 expansion didn't include district councillors, but rather representatives of district-based organizations, just like what we will have after the electoral changes. Now, also the second term of LegCo included 6 members from the election committee. But now the total is expanding to 40 in the upcoming 7th legislature. So can you explain to the Hong Kong people how this is not a regression of democracy?
No, the situation is since 1997, the Central People's Government has been very sincere in taking forward Hong Kong's political system in terms of giving people more democracy, universal suffrage in a gradual and orderly manner. So altogether, 3 sets of reforms have been put on the table, but they were rejected. There was only one. On one occasion, it went through Legislative Council, but now proven to be perhaps not the best option for Hong Kong. So one could not just look at the numbers or the percentage of members who are returned through a particular method, because ultimately, as provided for in the Basic Law, is one country, two systems. Hong Kong is not an independent state. Hong Kong is a part of the People's Republic of China, and the political structure has to fulfill the one country, two systems, and one country has to come first. We have to safeguard national security, sovereignty, and development interests. The other is, of course, the actual situation. We have to look at the actual situation, that what has happened through the electoral system is people are exploiting the loopholes in the electoral system and have turned all these political institutions into platforms for doing anti-government, anti-China, subversion, or even cessation activities by going all the way to America and other places to seek sanctions against Hong Kong, not against officials alone, but against Hong Kong. So they are being detrimental to the interests of Hong Kong. And another feature, as required under the Basic Law, is broad representation. So other than just look at individual percentages and numbers to be returned by each type of sector or subsector, one could not dispute that the current composition of 1,500 members is far more representative of society. Now we have a lot of other associations being put in, for example, grassroots organizations, clansmen associations, and small and medium-sized enterprises, representatives of Hong Kong people living and working in the mainland. Isn't this a very broad representation of society interest?
We understand that. But would you say, a popular vote would ensure broader representation, or you're afraid of its uncertain outcome?
No, people still can vote on the geographical constituencies, and that is one person, one vote. But as I said, any political system, you have to look at the fundamental interests, and the primary interest of Hong Kong is one country, two systems. Without one country, there could be no two systems. And without one country, two systems, there could be no long-term prosperity and stability in Hong Kong. We have seen that very clearly since the latter half of 2019.
Yeah, no one is disputing that Hong Kong is part of China, and the tantamount paramount principle of one country, two systems. But it seems that pro-Beijing forces stand to be the biggest winners after the revamp, while democratic influence looks to be dwindling in the legislature and in the election committee. So how do you convince Hong Kong's general public that they're better represented by this?
Well, I think both labels are not correct. There isn't a group called pro-Beijing. I think most of the people are pro-Hong Kong. But pro-Hong Kong requires accepting that Hong Kong is an inalienable part of the People's Republic of China. So it's not pro-Beijing or anti-Beijing, so to speak. And democracy it should not be equated with anti-China, with being unpatriotic. I have worked with people from the democratic camp who are very patriotic. And mind you, I have one former senior member of the Democratic Party in my cabinet. So one should not say that whenever somebody belongs to a political group which have this label on, which is a pro-democracy group, that he or she will not meet the requirements of a patriot and could not compete in an election under the new system.
Speaking of the pan-democratic forces in Electoral, now previously the pan-democratic camp has tried to block motions, of Annex 1 of the Basic Law, but failed because given amendments can only be made with the support of 2/3 of Electoral members. Now, this has demonstrated how hard it is to reach an agreement on the framework for implementing universal suffrage that can both satisfy Beijing and can pass Electoral. Now, it seems like the central government's solution to break the impasse is to change the composition of Electoral and to diminish the number of directly elected lawmakers. And yet you insist.
I'm afraid you've got the facts wrong about this 2/3 majority and vetoing a motion on universal suffrage. You have got the facts wrong. In 2014, I am very authoritative to answer that question. In late 2013 and up to June 2015, a total of 20 months, I, as the CS for administration, was leading a task force to give Hong Kong people universal suffrage under Basic Law 45, that is one person, one vote, to select the chief executive in 2017. That was given to us by a National People's Congress Standing Committee resolution on the 31st of August 2014. That was vetoed by the so-called pan-democratic camp. We have enough votes if they just came over to support this universal suffrage package. But they did not. They did not because they do not uphold the Basic Law. The Basic Law said, we'll give you ultimate goal, universal suffrage in the selection of a chief executive, but there needs to be a nomination process that the CE candidates have to be nominated by a broadly representative nominating committee. They said no. They said we had, not only said, they actually put into action the 79-day occupation of the prime district in Hong Kong in order to advocate for a civic nomination. That is, members of the public could just nominate the CE candidate, and that's clearly bridging the Basic Law. So you cannot blame the Central People's Government for not giving Hong Kong people universal suffrage. You couldn't even blame the SAR government. In those 20 months, I have spent time day in, day out to persuade people that that was the best package. Please accept it. That was thrown out by the pan-democratic camp.
So right now, can you lay out a path to universal suffrage for us?
The path is in the Basic Law 45 and Basic Law 68, and both have not been changed on this occasion. Not a single word has been changed by the NPCSC on this occasion, which means that the ultimate goal is still to get to universal suffrage. That is one person, one vote in selecting the chief executive, and universal suffrage in selecting all the members of the Legislative Council. But it has to fulfill two criteria. One is gradual and orderly. The other is actual situation. Okay. In fact, if you ask me, since 1997, it's faster than gradual and orderly. Had it not been thrown out, 2017, 20 years, we will already have universal suffrage. But that was sabotaged. I was very passionate and very sad about this thing because of my personal involvement. That was sabotaged by the pan-democratic camp. So if you ask me now, I said the track is there. We have been through this package, we have brought this electoral system back to the right track. As long as you are on the right track, then you can still move ahead. If you were not on the right track, you have gone astray. You will never be able to reach that ultimate goal. But how long it will take, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Much depends on how Hong Kong people treasure the system.
Your best guess?
I could not guess this.
Okay. All right, let's take a short break here. We'll be right back. Stay with us.